Welcome, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, to episode number 210 of Gaming the Industry. My name is Shank. I'm not alone. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. Actually, two pretty cool topics. But like I said, I'm not alone. I'm joined by my struggling translator of sorts, Brad Falterkin.
Struggling is correct here because I feel like my Scott Malkinson disease is causing my eyesight to go, so I had to like literally make the text in our show notes bigger. Yeah, so welcome to Gaming in the Industry, guys. We are gonna regale you with some actually interesting. Like we're not gonna be complaining. Well, I'm not gonna be complaining tonight. I don't know about Shank, but we're actually gonna be talking about some very interesting things tonight. But we really hope our cohort, Brian Kuhn, will be able to join us. But he is having audio issues. So he'll join us as soon as he get those working. Excuse me. But his Japanese is not improving because he's learning from Shank. Though this week's Japanese is eerily close to something real, making me think that Shank actually plans these things and it's not just an amalgamation of letters being put into a Japanese text translator. He wrote, San Francisco Nihonjin Sebensu de Adventisto Kyokai. Oh, which basically says San Francisco Nihonjin, which is Japanese person, Seventh Day Adventist Church. Oh. It's a little bit too on the nose for me to think he's just putting crap in somewhere. Considering I sent him San Francisco earlier today.
That's why I did it. I put San Francisco. I got the characters, and then I added some more. I button mashed on my phone.
No, you didn't button mash. You deliberately put Seventh Day Adventist Church. While Shank is in the background dying there, we'll be announcing TajiCon details tomorrow. Stay tuned. We're looking to get not CCP as a special guest. Anybody else except CCP. Also, a reminder that myself, Brian, Pete, and Shank are extremely excited to announce that the tryouts for the Taji Balls Esports League are now officially open. To enter, DM any one of those guys on Twitter. Don't DM this guy. I don't want to be DM'd. Actually, if I'm not following you, if you DM me, I won't get it. So, this is an actual reminder. This is the only actual information that is relevant in our entire show summary. We are actually doing a Balls Does ESO stream. That is every Saturday night. Myself, Brian, Pete, and Shank have revived our old stream from the dock days. Every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. I don't know what times are, 8 p.m. Pacific. And essentially this will stream to Shank's Twitch, YouTube, Periscope, and Mixer channel, my Facebook channel, as well as Brian's Twitch, which is at Brian the Witcher. We won't have any bullying. We're not going to have any narcissistic people who think they own everybody. We're not going to have any bigots or racists. Well, Brian's there, but you know. This is basically the classic Elder Scrolls stream with the Taji Balls crew. You may even have some special guests join us who may or may not be high. 2 of them may or may not be high, actually. That's been our luck so far. Also, remember, guys, with the X52 ProFlight sticks, you can buy a water mod component to liquid cool your GPU this weekend. Shank is not going to have any control.
No, I will. I'm buying 2 components.
Right. This is going to go horribly wrong, and I cannot believe you are going to void the warranty on something that expensive.
I did it to the 1080 Ti, and I had no issues with that.
This is double the price of the 1080 Ti.
The process is exact. Actually, it's probably simpler because the 1080 Ti was on the reference cooler, and NVIDIA's reference coolers are just a pain to get off.
Right, but like these are just, from what I've heard, the RTX cards are even worse to get off.
I don't have a reference RTX card though.
Well,
I have a
be
partner
rich,
board, and they're much easier
and more expensive.
I mean, yeah,
but
it's easier.
Just flaunting your wealth.
Yep.
Quick Windows set update. I have nothing. EVE Online is on fire, you guys. We're going to talk about that. And NVIDIA's super cards are here. This was supposed to be AMD's month, but NVIDIA just can't let them have any nice things. So we're going to talk about specs, reviews, and Shank's thoughts. Not my thoughts, Shank's thoughts. So Shank, what are you playing, man?
I'm playing ESO. What are you playing?
I'm playing EVE Online.
Okay, cool.
Oh, also ESO. I hit level 50 with my Necromancer this week at ESO. Basically, I think on Sunday I just did the Dolmen runs for like 4 hours, just getting those last levels I needed. Because I I really need a champion level character for these upcoming reviews. Just because the trials and stuff I can't review. Well, first of all, normally they're not live right away, but secondly, I can't review the trial if I don't have a character that can do it. And so the Necromancer has
Our
been,
trials raids.
yeah, this is the raid we failed miserably at. Yes.
Oh.
So essentially, I got my Necromancer to 50. I'm now going through the champion point grind, which I get champion points a lot faster than you get levels, which is nice. But considering there's 810 of these things, it kind of needs to be that way. But yeah, doing that grind, proving once and for all that I have become a very efficient MMO reviewer because I no longer stop in dungeons. We found that out the other night when all of us were playing, and Leif and I were just glass cannoning everything. I don't know if Brian actually hit anything.
Well, we lost him.
We did. No, it was Pete we lost. We did lose
no.
Brian in his audio,
Yes, exactly.
which, I mean, what's new? But no, that was actually funny because I remember when I was doing my Somerset review, and Leif was helping me with that as well because he was reviewing it for PC World at the time. I remember being so frustrated by the fact that he was just blasting through those things. And I wanted to stop and take in the story and everything like that. And I basically just got so used to doing it and getting the story while I do it that I realized the other night while we were doing that dungeon, I'm starting to play that way just as my normal play style now. And it was super unfair to you. It was super unfair to Pete. Super unfair to Brian. Who else was with us?
It was 5 of us. It was just us 5.
Oh, yeah. And so I know Leif probably felt a little bad. I felt really bad because I know you guys really want to take in the story. Now, I've just gotten used to that because I review MMOs now. I've basically become IGN's MMO reviewer at this point. And that's the way you have to play those games to be able to do it in the time crunch those reviews require. And yeah, it was really, really funny when you guys started like mentioning it, and you could just palpably hear me and Leif just kind of feel bad on the call. And I know you guys weren't saying it to make us feel bad, but it was definitely funny seeing looking back on it. Definitely funny seeing just the difference in playstyle now, because I was just like you guys originally, and now it's like second nature. So, yeah. What have you been doing in ESO?
I have been playing through the main, main quote unquote main story in Somerset. Somerset I did a side quest last night. This is on the quality of like some of the Oblivion side quests that I played in terms of like how memorable it was. That game to me is legitimately, I can remember almost every single thing about that game because it left such a lasting impact on me. Specifically, like the Thieves Guild in that game was just brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when you play those games, like there are certain quests that just stick out in your mind, and you're just like, that was just a brilliantly executed quest.
Mm-hmm.
In Somerset specifically, there was one quest line. It's a side quest, but it's one of those like settlement quests where you have to quote unquote complete or complete that settlement, and it's like the main story in that town. And so there's a town to the east in Somerset called Lilandril, and it's not really a murder mystery, but you're trying to clear somebody's name, and it unravels into this other big sort of story. And that quest to me, the writing in there, the entire thing, I mean, it took me like an hour and a half to do the quest because I was taking in every single word that was being said, and I was reading all of the documents as I usually do. It's just my play style. I read everything and I listen to everything. But this quest in particular, I spent a little extra time because it was so memorable. You've probably done this quest last year when you did your review, but it is such a memorable quest. And it stuck out to me, and it's the writing in that quest in particular was just really good.
Yeah,
And
I mentioned that quest. I don't know if this is what you just said because I was yelling at my kid, but I mentioned that quest specifically in my review.
Okay, cool. Yeah, see, I didn't I I didn't know that. I don't think I've read your review in like a year. But
Well, that would make sense. It's been a year
yeah,
since I wrote it.
but so this quest to me felt so like Elder Scrolls, to the point where like I want this team, whoever is writing ESO, to go write the new Elder Scrolls single player game. Because number one, I don't trust Bethesda Game Studios. I just don't think they have the talent. And number two, this felt like a very much an Elder Scrolls quest of old, where at the end of this quest, and I've noticed this with a lot of these ESO quests since I've come back to the game, is that many of them will present you with choices. And there are no, sometimes you have a choice where you're very heavily leaning towards one versus the other. But this one, like last night, this specific quest, I didn't like either of the choices, but you had to make one. And it was, the writing was so good that it actually changed my mind literally seconds before I selected which response I was going to give, just because of the way that one of the characters delivered the line. And I was like, my God, I mean, that was just it. It was one of those moments where it just clicked for me, and I was just like, this is such a good game. Like, it is, the writing is so good, the execution of the quests is so good, the pacing is so good.
You know what I just kind of realized
What?
as you're talking about these quests in Somerset, and I'm thinking back to when I wrote my Elsewhere review. I think I just finally realized why I didn't like the main quest in Elsewhere, but I really liked the quests in Somerset, including the main quest. Somerset felt as though it was more focused on the local and the minute, storylines that were being told
Mm-hmm.
in that area, just like Morrowind. Even though the fate of the world hung in the balance with Morrowind, because you had, well, haven't played it, so never mind.
Not yet.
Now
But
that I think about it, you haven't played the original Morrowind, which once you play this one, and if you know the story from the original Morrowind, oh my gosh. Anyways, but those stories focus on the minute. Those stories focus on what's happening to the High Elves, to the Almeri Dominion, what's happening to Somerset. Yeah, Artaeum comes into play, the Sigil Order, all that crap, and it does tie back to the overall branching storyline of Molag Bal and everything like that. But I have never really liked Elder Scrolls storylines that make you the center of attention, especially in Elder Scrolls Online, where you're very obviously not the only one there. And Somerset feels as though it's, like I said, it's focusing on what's there, whereas elsewhere it was such an existential threat that it felt like it was going back to those single player Elder Scrolls games, trying to be too much of that, and not enough of what's made it great the last few years. Now, I still think Elsewhere overall is a great expansion, but I feel like that's why I didn't like the main storyline versus, the side quests. I thought the side quests were brilliantly written in Elsewhere versus Somerset. So, I don't know. I didn't mean to interrupt, but you're talking about it, and it just kind of clicked for me. A
yeah,
month
no,
a
I mean, I
month after
agree.
I wrote
Like,
the review.
I honestly think one of the easiest things that these MMOs could do, and I don't, and obviously this is just my lack of experience in MMOs, because it, ESO is the only MMO that I'm ever realistically going to play. I'm just going to lay that out there right now. So I don't know how it's done in other MMOs, but this this is one of the reasons why I don't like quote unquote traditional MMOs, is because how can you be the hero when there's thousands of other people dressed like you doing the same thing? I mean, there's a cognitive wall there. One thing I think that they could have done very easily in Elsewhere, in my opinion, was when the I don't want to give any names away, but when the main NPC character who becomes super important, like as the mainline storyline progresses, and another character who may or may not be a mage, like one of the things that they could have easily just framed it as is, hey, we've had others like you helping us. But they never frame it like you are one of many people who are all pitching in to help. It always seems like you are literally the only person they can rely on. And I think just literally just phrasing it so that it's, hey, we got some help from some other like heroes or something like that, and that will kind of ground me as a player and say, yeah, well, okay, of course I'm not the only one who's doing this. There's other people helping, and it that to me almost like sells the mythos more than just saying, "Oh man, thank you, Five Claw. You're the only person that can like help us." I honestly think it's just it
Yeah,
can be solved very easily with writing.
that cognitive wall is very inconsistent in ESO because it tries to be there and then it's not. Then it's back. Then it's not. Just depending on the quest, it's just yeah. And that's actually one reason why I like the fact that a lot of the Molag Bal quests now are only solo quests. So a lot of the things that have to do with the anchorage and the prophet and everything like that, you go into it knowing full well you're by yourself. So those kind of walls just aren't there. When the prophet tells you that you are the only one who can handle it, you're the only one around talking to the prophet. So it feels a bit better. But you're right. When you're in certain areas with those characters and they're talking about it, but yet you're just surrounded by 15 other people. In my Somerset review, no, my Morrowind review, I actually had a point in the video where I showed that because that's something that the ESO team even today still hasn't solved. How do they fully get rid of that feeling? Either it needs to be one way or the other, and they oftentimes try to mix it. There was one quest where you had to don the garb of the judge, and it's talking about how you are the only one who's able to do this, and then you pull out of the screen where you're talking to the character, and it's you and 15 other people wearing the identical costume talking to this person, and it just pulls you completely out of that immersion. So yeah, and that's honestly why I think I really like Somerset over Elsewhere, is for that simple fact. Elsewhere's main storyline doesn't follow the rules that it's been setting up since Hrothgar.
Yeah,
So
and I'm glad I did Elsewhere first, obviously because I got the expansion with Elsewhere, because I think I needed that expansion to get my feet wet again and start to understand the systems more. Because, like I've said a bunch of times in the past, Somerset really is my idyllic fantasy setting and environment and everything. So I think I'm enjoying Somerset more because I was able to retrain myself with Elsewhere, so I can enjoy my
Art
idyllic setting more.
Artaeum is just stupid pretty as well.
Artaeum is gorgeous. No, it is gorgeous. I spent 3 hours the other night just walking around doing that. Because when the Right Master, or I think that's right. Yeah, the Right Master. He's like, you could go talk to Oriandra, or just wander around our island. I was like, well, I'm gonna go wander around the island and take it in because this is ridiculously pretty.
It's
So
the little touches in Artaeum that really impressed me because this is supposed to be an island that's completely removed from Tamriel.
yeah, it's like on another plane of existence.
Yeah,
Basically.
and it's also self-sufficient. You walk around the island, you find farms, you find vineyards, you find cattle, you find everything you need to make this island.
Terraced farming.
Yeah,
Is what it's called.
yeah. You find everything you need to make this island believable as something that these people could live on. And yeah, they have the ability to go back and forth between Tamriel and Artaeum, but you could also just never have to.
Yeah.
It's the little details like that that really made that place stick out to me.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like it's the details, it's the minutia of ESO. I think because we've got Dark Riku in the chat saying wish I had gotten into ESO earlier. Ended up getting into Final Fantasy 14 instead. Dislike the sub fee, but I enjoy it.
You're
Uh,
probably.
I
I'm sorry. I was gonna say you're probably playing the best storyline in any MMO out there right now, by all accounts.
That's what I've heard, but
Yeah.
I agree with you. I wish I had gotten into ESO earlier, and I'm kicking myself for not playing it.
I told you
since
for
the
3
one
years,
Tamriel
man.
update. No, you didn't. Brian and Pete did.
I literally sent you all of I've written the reviews for 3 years, and I've sent you every single one saying play this game.
I don't think you have. So I'm glad that I'm playing it now with a wealth of content to go back to, because honestly, like, I didn't fully realize that with the DLC, just because the way that the UI is presented to you in the game, it looked like to me that I didn't have the DLC, but with the sub you have all the DLC. So when I realized, like, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, and then I was like, oh my god, I have Murkmire, I have Orsinium, I have all of these different places, I have the Thieves Guild, the Dark Brother, like all of these things. That was very eye-opening for me. And when we visited Orsinium on Saturday, no, Saturday, Tuesday, I don't know, sometime we visited Orsinium, but that was
Monday.
mind-blowing. I'm doing the Thieves Guild now. There's so much content in this game. It legitimately feels like an Elder Scrolls game. It really feels like an Elder Scrolls game now. So I'm loving it. I mean, I oh, and one quick little thing that I found in the App Store. If you're on iOS, I have no idea about for Android. There's an app called the ESO app, and it's basically it has all of the maps for, I believe, every single zone that's out right now. And it's actually really cool because you can like tap into a zone and it's got all the points of interest, any crafting nodes and stuff like that. So for sure, this is kind of like a cheat sheet. But I honestly think this is actually a really handy resource for somebody like me who's doing exploration. Because the way that I do it is I explore the crap out of something, and then after the fact, when I have something to consult like this to see, okay, did I miss any point of interest that I really want to go see? Something like this is pretty handy. It's free. It's on the App Store on iOS, called the ESO app, and it's pretty nice. It's quite handy. But yeah, we're gonna be live streaming again on Saturday night at
Yep.
11 p.m. Eastern. No idea what we're gonna do, but we will announce it beforehand.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We're probably not going to do too many story things for the very reason that I was discussing earlier. We'll just blow through it, and people we're playing with actually want to absorb as much as they can. So you're not going to see any like Dark Brotherhood or Thieves Guild content or anything like that. We'll probably do dungeons. We'll probably do world bosses, stuff like that to fill time. Maybe we'll do an excursion in
Raids.
Cyrodiil. No, we're not. No, not until you guys are champion level.
I think that's why we need to do raids,
No,
because we're not champion level.
no. Um,
Cyrodiil would be panic as balls.
yeah, but you guys are leveled enough to do it, which
Am I?
is yeah.
I'm
You have
29.
yeah, you have to be level 10.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I think we're all in different alliances, so we'll be like against each other. Like you're what, Aldmeri?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm
Pick me,
Daggerfall.
man.
I'm Daggerfall because generic, knights with a white dude in charge.
Wait. We can't PvP together.
No, we can. We'll just be PvPing against each other
Why?
because we're in different alliances.
I thought one Tamriel fixed that.
It fixed the inability to start anywhere you wanted, but it doesn't fix the core PvP of the game.
Ginter in chat is saying yes, exactly. We need to have a panicking Shank in the midst of keep siege warfare.
Yep, that's what we're doing. PvP Saturday. Mark your calendars.
Okay, just real quick. You saw how much I panicked for Dolmen runs?
Yeah, no, you'll be 100% screwed, and I cannot wait to kill you. We are not going to talk about Mordhau because I have no clue what that is.
It's like chivalry, but there's like a bunch of racists running rampant in there because it's the internet. I don't
yeah.
know.
No, that's right. This is the game that people were asking the developers to put in a feature where they can only see white people.
Yep.
Oh God, imagine being that person. Like, I am a white dude. Okay. Through no fault of my own, I'm a white dude. I have never once thought about a world as only white people.
Jesus Christ.
And I've never
What
wanted
is
my
wrong
video
with
games to be that.
God.
You know what's funny,
What is
Enter?
wrong with people?
I could play my Aldmeri. I have a level 42 Templar who's Aldmeri Dominion. I could play that if we did PvP, but I think it'd be more fun to find and kill Shank.
How would you know we were in the same PvP instance? Is that even how it works? I don't even know
No,
how PvP
dude,
works.
Cyrodiil is Cyrodiil. You go into Cyrodiil, you find each other. Someone dies.
So anybody in PvP, it doesn't matter if they're like on a different
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
instance
Well,
or
no,
whatever.
there are. I don't think there are any dynamic layers in Cyrodiil
I don't know what that
because
means.
otherwise the PvP wouldn't work. If everyone's on a different layer of the instance, then how would you meet up for a PvP battle? How would you attack a keep? You know, it that wouldn't work. The dynamic layers in, like I say, Daggerfall, work because you may have other people at different points in quest lines in that city. But with Cyrodiil, everything is everything. So you enter Cyrodiil from your faction's entrance, and hope no one finds you. Because there's still PvE content in Cyrodiil. Like there are still quests you can do there. It's just, if you run into a player, they're not going to have any mercy on you. If you say, "Don't kill me, I'm PvPing," that's kind of the risk you took by going to Cyrodiil. It's cool though.
I'm
Going to
already starting to panic.
going to some of the cities that are. I think Cheydinhal is in Cyrodiil that you can go to.
Is Cyrodiil big enough? Like, does it expand that far out? Because I know it's not all of Cyrodiil.
It's not all of Cyrodiil, no, because like Gold Coast is different. So Kvatch and Anvil are in a different area. I don't think it goes all the way down to the southernmost city.
Leyawiin.
Yeah.
Let me actually look at
I
the
don't.
map here.
I think Bruma's in it. I could be wrong though.
That's
I
pretty
know.
far north.
I know Cheydinhal's in it. And then the other one on the other side that you found prior, the
Coral? Coral's in the west.
yeah,
Cheydinhal's in the
Coral.
east.
Coral's there as well.
Is Skingrad? Skingrad? I don't know. So that might be Skingrad. I don't know. They don't have the cities, do they? I have no idea. Because I know for the fact that it's not all of Cyrodiil because Anvil is a PvP area. Anvil and Kvatch.
Yeah, Anvil and Kvatch are both PVE. They're part of the Dark Brotherhood DLC that came out. But yeah, no, we'll just have to go figure it out.
Okay. This is going to be... I'm already panicking.
Speaking of panicking, that's what EVE Online players are doing right now.
Yeah.
I've been playing EVE Online for the past week just because all of the stories that I've been reading since last week have kind of given me that itch to hop back in. And I went on my first Abyssal Dead Space run, which Abyssal Dead Space is kind of like this big PvE event that they released, I think, last year. And essentially it takes you to like a instanced pocket of space where you have 20 minutes to find your way out of. And you have to kill Draclavians, you have to there's like ship to structure warfare and everything like that. And I made it through the first checkpoint and then got to the second one and I was like, okay, there are only 3 ships here. Fine. I can send my drones out and wreck them. My drones got killed almost instantaneously because the other 2 ships were support ships that were repairing the ship that I was trying to attack. And since all of my drones were gone, and I'm basically just flying a Vexor, which is a drone boat, it's not meant to like engage in actual combat itself. I have guns on it in case I have to, but that's not what it's meant for. It's not very maneuverable. It's just meant to carry heavy attack drones. Like, it's the ship where you can send your drones out and then watch a YouTube video. I got just blown to like freaking bits. But it was so much fun that I bought another Vexor. I've replaced all of my drones. I've bought an Astero, which is this really pretty looking ship that's meant for just exploration. And then I bought a Gromer, which is like it's a frigate that is meant for like just close quarter warfare. It's meant to just get in and kill people. And I'm flying around. I'm trying to discover things. I'm killing pirates to get money. It's a lot of fun. I'm still playing primarily solo because I'm not in a big corporation or anything like that. I have friends who all play in nullsec. I mainly stick to highsec because I'm not established enough in the game that I can risk taking a ship to nullsec and then not getting back, because they'll blow up the pod too. They won't just blow up the ship. They'll kill you completely. But I think the nullsec people have their hands full right now, and I guess we can segue into my talking point. But before we do that, we should probably ask Brian if a certain online driving game that consisted of like clubs is working.
Oh, hold on. I just got a text from Brian saying, "Can you guys hear me?"
I don't know.
Okay.
We probably moved into a different chat channel.
No, we probably didn't. He probably was just moved by the Discord gods.
So EVE Online is on fire. Both from a PR standpoint last week, and then literally on fire in the game itself. In fact, as we hopped on this call, the Drifters got logged their first Citadel kill mail, which is huge. Like a Citadel going down against NPC fighters is nothing to slouch at.
What is a Citadel?
A Citadel is a large player-made structure meant to hold a region of space as well as act as a hub and safe space for pilots who want to log out.
Like a space station?
It's a massive space station, yes. A Citadel in EVE Online is an alliance hub. It's a point to defend.
Wait. Is this one of the things that they were like that huge war where people were like putting ships for like a year through like black holes and stuff before they attacked a citadel for one
Yeah.
of these corp.
Yeah.
So
These
that's what a
things,
citadel is.
that's the Citadel. I'm looking at your stream right now. This thing it's massive. And it's expensive. I think the one, let me pull up the kill mail.
How do you spell it?
Yintan. Citadel?
No,
SCITADEL.
I thought you were talking about a specific one.
No. There's one that was destroyed. I'm going to pull up Yintan's tweet. Okay, so yeah, this tweet here, I'll drop the link in Discord. Yintan is one of the more prolific EVE Online players. He is a former member of the Council of Stellar Management. He's no longer on it, but he is part of one of the largest alliances. I think he's an Imperium. He actually had a portion of his EVE Online gameplay where he was basically living out a Cold War spy novel, where he was the Cold War spy. He's a very interesting dude who's done a crap ton. But yeah, this Citadel, which cost 749 billion ISK.
Yes. 700. Holy crap.
Yeah. Actually, this looks like it's million, but still.
No, 749 million, yeah.
Yeah. That's just the value of what it was that's just the value of what it was when it was destroyed. It cost a whole lot more than that because you have to also factor in how long it takes to build one of these things. And this is player built. This isn't a NPC Citadel or NPC station like Jita is. Jita is kind of one of the main hubs in the game. So yeah. Sorry. So if you haven't been paying attention to EVE Online, two major things have happened in the last 2 weeks. CCP started selling skill points on their store, on their website, which were effectively giving players access to 1 million skill points, which is huge because skills in this game don't necessarily make the player. You can have a player with 0 skills in the game, but is a good enough pilot to destroy anybody.
Like me?
No, you would need the skills and then actual real life skill. God, I've got an itch in my throat now. I'm sorry, guys. Essentially,
Question from Inter.
yeah.
When you say player build, do you mean in the sense of space engineers, or do you mean in the sense of players simply gather resources and/or contribute funds?
Both.
Okay.
Like, this isn't something that you just click a button and now it's built. It takes time. There are stages to it. You have players who are specifically spec'd out for this. You have entire corporations that have entire supply chains, like actual supply chains, that some of the materials are only farmable in nullsec, which if you're not sure what nullsec is, null, 0, sec means security, which means that's like the PvP area. You go to nullsec, expect to lose everything.
So it's the Wild West, basically.
Yeah, it's 100%. It's the wild. If you ever played RuneScape, you're going into the wild, except it's a lot bigger and a lot more dangerous, and you have people camping the gates. So yeah, you have materials that are only mined there. So you have entire corporations with supply chains and miners. You have people who are protecting the miners from any sort of other alliance trying to disrupt the supply chain. You've got space truckers literally trucking materials back and forth between regional markets, between PvE markets, between the station hubs. Then you have to find a place in space where you can drop this thing, and then you have to build it. It takes a lot more than just simply, like it is in ESO, where when you craft something, it just shows up in your inventory. It takes a lot of time.
I pictured it was like in StarCraft, where you select where you want to put it, and then it starts to build over time.
Yeah, but you still have to supply. Like once you spend the resources in StarCraft, it builds regardless of what resources you have. Mm-hmm. You still have to contribute resources and funds to it.
Is that right?
It's insane. And so when one of these gets killed by a player, it's typically a big deal. But this wasn't killed by players. This was destroyed by NPCs, which is also a feat into and of itself because attacks on citadels have stages. EVE Online essentially when you have battle declarations, you've got multiple stages for some of these large fights because you have to give both sides the ability to muster. It takes time. Traveling in EVE takes time. People play in so many different time zones. Alliances have to be able to coordinate that. Essentially, these Citadel battles happen in phases. You have the attacker phase. The defenders have then a chance to regroup and bolster the defenses for another phase. Citadels go down in 3 phases. And so far, the drifters that have been attacking have only stuck around for that first phase. They have never come back trying to destroy it in the second or third phase. But now this has happened, which is showing a change in the AI, which I'll kind of get to in a second. But earlier last week, I'll get back to the one of the other controversies. They were selling skill points on their store. 1 million skill points is enough to. It's not a whole lot in the grand scheme of, skill points, but when you consider to get a skill injector that's 400,000 skill points in the game, it costs you upwards of 1 billion ISK, in-game currency essentially. And you also factor in the fact that those skill injectors are made by other players. These aren't just skill injectors on the market provided by NPCs and crap. These are everything you buy and sell in EVE Online is made by a player. It's an actual economy, and so a lot of the uproar with EVE Online selling skill points for real life money, which, to be fair, isn't the first time they've done this. It's just the first time the greater EVE community has noticed it, because they've been doing it on Steam, and the vast, I would say about 98% of EVE players don't ever play it on Steam. So they were just ignorant of the fact that they were there. But the idea was floated by CCP because they have a 4% player retention rate across 30 days. So
yeah, that's bad.
It's insane. And it's not anything new. They have been struggling for years to retain new players. It's something they talk about at every single FanFest, every single EVE Vegas. CCP Ghost and his team made an entirely new player experience just to tackle this issue, and it hasn't worked the way it should, the way that they've wanted to. EVE Online is just a notoriously hard game to get into. You have to be really interested in it and really learn the mechanics. It's one of those games that it looks very intimidating, and in some ways it is, but once you get used to the mechanics, once you get used to it, it is actually relatively simple to just hop in and play after that point. And then the vast majority of the complexity comes from the player run, the emerging gameplay. So CCP has kind of backtracked on what they're doing. It's still available on their store, but you can only purchase it from an account that is less than 30 days old. So the idea is this is a way to boost new players, get them the skills they need to fly their first ship, as opposed to just being stuck with the crappy Corvettes that you're given at the beginning of the game. It's still somewhat exploitable, though, because old players... There are some people who have over 250 separate EVE Online accounts to farm materials, to infiltrate other alliances. One player I talked to has over 400 individual accounts. So
that's ridiculous.
It's very easy for someone who knows the system, knows how to game the system, to just create a new character, buy the skill injector, trade it on the market, or send it to another player, or however they have to do it. It may be an item that's only redeemable on that character, but then they can just take the skills they learn with it, extract them, and then sell that as a skill implant. There's so many different ways to game the system. So a lot of the ire came from the fact that EVE players felt as though that CCP broke their promise in selling these, which again they've been doing for years regardless. But also it undermines the player economy. Because if this is something that you can... How does a player manage more than a handful of accounts? Do your characters accomplish things? Yeah. You can... Research takes time. Right now, I am trying to research Cloaking 4, which there's usually 5 levels to each skill. I'm on the 4th level. That is going to take 5 days to train. And that timer goes whether I'm logged in or not. And there are plenty of ways that you can play AFK. There are some players who are so well established and know the game so well that they never log in. The Judge is one of those players. He's on the Council of Stellar Management. He plays the game entirely through Discord chat. and yet still
How do you
runs.
do that?
It's just he knows the game. He knows what's going on at any moment. It doesn't have to be like he can log in. He doesn't have to log in to be able to direct his thousands and thousands of followers to do what he needs to better his position and better the position of his alliance. It's insane. This game is literally a secondary world, which is what makes this next issue both incredibly intriguing but also understandably frustrating for those players.
And real quick, I read this article. This article now that we're going to talk about is actually 6 days old at the time of this podcast recording. I read it yesterday, so it was 5 days old when I read it, and I didn't see how old it was, and I thought it was like a brand new article. So when I brought it up to Bradford, he was like, "Oh yeah, like this is against the backdrop of all this crazy stuff happening in the background." So as an outsider, I was like, "This is really cool," but apparently it's not.
Well, no, in a bubble, it's really cool because one of the big things CCP has harped on for years, every single time I've talked to them, what are the things they want to be known for as a game company is simply being the caretakers of the sandbox and the players being the one who drive everything. The economy is driven by players. The great stories and great wars are based on player emergent gameplay. Everything in this game should run on the players themselves. CCP should just be giving them the tools to be able to do so. Whether you're a PvP player or a PvE player, CCP should not be dictating what you can and cannot do or what you have to do in EVE Online. Sure, there needs to be structure, and there is based, if you're going to do the agency quest, faction warfare, mining, whatever, exploration, there's plenty of structure for the players who are looking for it. But the vast majority of people, when you read about the stories of EVE Online, they're not talking about players like me who spend all their time in the main, galactic hub in Jeddah, and I maybe go 10 systems away and then come back, but by the time I'm done playing, because I'm scared to go anywhere else because I don't want to lose everything. They're talking about the players like the Matani, like the Judge, like Yantan, like some of the, basically all the low-sec and null-sec players. So when this happened the other day, I couldn't think of anything else other than this is interesting timing. This may very well have been something that they had planned for months, and it just happened to coincide with a black eye, PR-wise. But EVE Online's Drifters, which are an NPC pirate class that kind of harass players, they started attacking nullsec and lowsec players and structures. And it's not just like a wave of 5 or 6, drifters like it normally is. It's like player-sized fleets attacking these things. And from the outset, it looks interesting. This is an unprecedented thing that's happened, though technically it's not, because there is another alien invasion going on right now in the story. The Triglavians have left Abyssal Dead Space, are invading New Eden. So you have one alien invasion already happening, but that's an alien invasion that's PvE. You never really have to deal with it if you're going to go to low sec or null sec. And at the end of the day, it doesn't affect the great, intrigue that are the massive alliances in EVE Online. This is directly targeting those players. These are the players that basically keep EVE Online afloat. These are the players that have over 400 accounts. Just imagine if even a fraction of those are paying the sub. It's insane. Yeah, these are the players that keep this game afloat. And when it first started happening, it was weird because a lot of these players thought there's a tactic that you can use where when a drifter attacks, you can take refuge in a citadel, and the citadel's attacks will destroy it. Yeah, I'll get to that in a second, Dracon, because I got that same response from CCP when I asked about it. So many people thought that was just what this was until they started seeing like people go down, structures go down, like smaller structures, not a citadel yet. Citadel just happened today. So you had all of these alliances who are currently at war with each other. Like, massive campaigns have been planned for months and months and months. Things are in motion that you can't exactly just stop. It's like Helmut von Moltke. You know,
I was gonna say this sounds very.
You don't improvise the deployment of millions. It's not necessarily millions here, but when you have thousands of players from across the world all coordinating on the same thing, and then something like this happens where you have to completely stop so you can go back and defend your crap.
But this sounds like the drifters basically schleef into the players.
Yeah, essentially. The problem is it's not even consistent. It's not happening to every alliance, and it's not happening all across nullsec. At least it wasn't before. It may have changed now, because the drifters actually stopped yesterday, and then they started back up today. But essentially, the reason why this is such a huge deal is it's never happened before in the game. You've never had this kind of coordinated attack by a singular faction that isn't part of the story doing something like this, and you've never had it against EVE's most hardcore players. Essentially, this is EVE Online CCP growing some balls and trying to shake things up, trying to shake up the monotony that has become nullsec and lowsec gameplay. The problem is it's coming at the expense of what has made EVE Online so great, and that's been the player-driven story. That's been the player-driven narratives. That's been the player-driven conflicts. CCP has basically run the risk of alienating the very players that are keeping this alive, because it's turned from something that was really interesting to begin with to something that's very annoying now. Steven Messner wrote both these articles for his PC Gamer, and the one he wrote yesterday literally has it in the title of the article, Annoyed. CCP will not acknowledge that this is going on more than a simple press release they sent me, basically saying that they've tried contacting the drifters, but the drifters won't respond. So they won't actively acknowledge anything's going on. They won't say anything about what they're exactly trying to do, and they won't say anything about how long this is going to happen or if this is the new norm in nullsec. But it's gotten to the point where it turned from just this interesting idea, even when you take into account that all of these massive alliances have had to basically put what they've been working on for years, in some cases, on hold to defend from an existential NPC threat, as opposed to having to defend against other players, which is what they're all there to do. They're not there to fight NPCs, they're there to fight each other. They're there to enjoy what makes EVE Online so unique. And it didn't take long for them to figure out how to repel these things. That may have changed as of today, as we noticed Citadel went down. But it was very predictable after a while, to the point where it was just an annoyance. You had some alliances that recorded like over 160 separate attacks in a 6-hour period. There's just waves and waves and waves of ships. And you start to lose the fun of what makes nullsec so interesting when you aren't able to choose what you're doing, but you're being forced into this. You're being forced to defend all of these Stargates, Citadel bases, beacons, and other player-created structures because CCP is relentlessly attacking you. Like I said, they had a breather for a day. It started back up again today. What this has actually done is it has caused the major alliances, Goonswarm, Pandemic Legion, Imperium, these massive alliances.
I've heard of Imperium.
Yeah, well, Imperium is one of the oldest. You have the Test Alliance, which it's actually kind of a funny name. It's testing, nothing to see here, thanks. That's the name of the alliance. Like, whenever someone puts up like a test stream, they always like, nothing to see here. That's the name of their alliance, essentially. But they're one of the largest alliances in EVE Online. And you have all of the main diplomats, which, think about that for a second. This is a game where you have actual people who play as diplomats and interact with other people who also play as diplomats. Yeah, it's interesting. But all of that is at risk because of these drifter attacks. Because it is changing the way that these players have chosen and been allowed to play for years and years. This is a 16-year-old game. And like I said, a lot of these alliances had to put campaigns that have been months and years in the planning on hold to defend against a threat they didn't even know they had to, because it's never been done before. So on one hand, it's really interesting that that's what they're doing, but on the other hand, it's again at the expense of who makes EVE Online great. And so these alliance leaders have actually met up and discussed retribution against CCP. And it's interesting to hear, like, what can they possibly do that would force CCP's hand to stop this, or to change it, or to at least tell them what the hell is going on, right? Like,
stop playing.
Well, that's not even it. They're not even going to stop playing. Some people have. Some people have started stop playing. Some people stopped playing because of the skill point thing. You had massive streamers like Manic Velocity decide to stop playing EVE Online because they can't support them for doing that. Which that takes balls, because 2 years ago he was on stage in Reykjavik doing the opening keynote of EVE FanFest. This isn't like some just no-name streamer. This is a guy that CCP has actively worked with to make their game better. So yeah, what do you think they could do in the game that would negatively affect EVE Online and make CCP acknowledge and change things? I'm actually asking.
Declare a truce to each other? I don't know.
Well, that's essentially what they're doing.
Basically not do anything.
So even though these are the players that make EVE Online great, they're the minority of EVE Online players. The vast majority of players play in high sec. They don't play the PvE storylines.
Are they just going to attack random innocent people?
Yeah, that's one of the things they're talking about doing. An actual invasion of high sec. They have the numbers, they have the skills, they have the freaking resources.
They know what the skills mean.
They have the resources to literally invade the PvE areas and turn it into a PvP zone, because you can still kill people in high sec. It's just you run the risk of being destroyed by security forces in those areas.
Yeah, but can't they overrun security?
That's exactly what they would be able to do. They could literally nuke refineries and structures that are used to basically harvest and refine materials for the market. They could disrupt supply chains. They could destroy mining expeditions. They can destroy monuments in the game. They could literally set high sec ablaze. Now, I'm being told they're not going to go that far. They may invade and destroy some high sec things, but one of the major things they're going to do is simply stop trading outside of nullsec, which will effectively create a massive shortage of resources and items on the marketplace, which could just essentially destroy the EVE Online's in-game economy, which is one of the most robust and well-realized economies in a video game. So much so that CCP has an economist on staff to make sure it runs the way a real economy should. There are tier 2 items that are only available in nullsec, and essentially these alliances have basically signed an agreement that they will only trade with other nullsec alliances, effectively embargoing all of high sec. So not only could they essentially ruin the game for PvE players, which when I asked one of the guys that I talked to today about whether or not that gives them any pause, he didn't even take like 5 seconds to type back this response. He literally responded with, "Why the fuck should I care about PvE players?" And he's got a point. I cannot wait to see what happens, but at the same time, this was so unavoidable, you know? Sure, it's interesting. It changed the narrative from selling skill points to this interesting event that's happening overnight. And to the outsider, this looks incredibly, fun. Like you said yourself, you looked at this and you thought it was great. You thought it was awesome to read. But then when you actually start diving into what this potentially means for EVE Online, the players that are playing it, and the future of the game, if CCP doesn't respond and change things up, their own players could literally hold the game hostage and make it so that the vast majority of people who play the game quit.
In a game that already has retention issues.
Yeah. Yeah. It's to me, it's one of those things where this game is so interesting. It's so on its own level in terms of the intricacies and the stories that are being told and what you can do in this game. Like, if you want to be a space trucker, you can do it. If you want to be a pirate, you can do that. If you want to be a diplomat, you can do that. It is so unique and so interesting, and the gaming industry is better for having a game like this. Game developers will be studying EVE Online for decades, you know. But it also speaks of a company who simply cannot get out of its own way sometimes. I can't. I wonder who on staff greenlit this, and whether or not they really thought that the reaction from the player base would be what it is, because people are pissed. It takes a lot for someone like the Mitani to actually come out and talk, but he's been quoted in like 3 PC Gamer articles and another massively OP article. I don't think he's been quoted in an article in probably 4 years. You have Andrew Groen, who's writing the history books called Empires of Eve. He's already written 2. This is basically going to help him start writing his 3rd. You have propaganda, and I'm not using that word lightly. You have actual propaganda being made in-game that's going up on player-made structures. You have the massive alliances who have just battled and battled and battled for years, putting aside their differences to essentially stranglehold all of New Eden. It's an interesting time, and I honestly cannot wait to see how this progresses.
Yeah, that's like, I will literally never play this game ever again. I tried briefly and I had no idea what I was doing. I like participating in this game by reading about it. And to me, like, when I read stories like this, it is like the coolest thing because it seems so real and so epic.
Well, and to the people who play it, it is real. This is their life.
No. When I mean real, I mean like the way that it's presented, because they have like this news reel. I think they call it the scope.
Yep. Yeah, their marketing is on point. It's very good.
And like when you watch this stuff, it literally it reads like every article that I've read about Eve with these epic things. They read like news stories, not like, oh, this is like, obviously this is very obviously a game. It's not real life. They don't read like that. It reads like, no, today this alliance attacked this person, like 5,000 people were battling, and it reads like this really did happen, and it to me just adds a huge layer of realism to it. And especially when you start watching their like newsreels with the scope, like the way that that's even presented and set up, it's like like, to me it's almost as if like you could fly to space right now, I go like outside of Earth and just see these citadels just floating around. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but like it feels so real the way that this is being written about. So I love that aspect of the game, that it feels so real. And I can't wait to see like what they do after this and like what the players are going to do, because this is so cool. Like, this is a part of me genuinely believes that this is the exact reaction that CCP wanted, was basically, what are the players going to do? Because to me this is just like a giant social experiment. And
to them it very much is as well. Like, that's what Ghost does. He pours into the social statistics of EVE Online, figures out how to make the game better based on them.
so yeah, that's, to me, there's a part of me that feels like somebody over at EVE did this whole Drifter invasion thing just to see how the players would react, and like this type of reaction is what they wanted. So I don't know, like I just, the next like week I think is going to be really interesting in this game, and I can't wait to read about it, because like that's like the coolest thing. I love reading about Eve.
I honestly cannot tell if the kill I'm looking at is an NPC, because they have just killed so many freaking things.
So this image that I've got up on my stream right now, are those drifters attacking a citadel? Like, is that a citadel?
From the scope. Oh, that's not them attacking a citadel, but it is an upwell structure.
So how big are citadels compared to that?
Flipping huge. Here, let me. I think I have a screenshot that I took today. I think. I hope I took it.
Was that right?
I know I was taking screenshots, but I may have accidentally pressed print screen instead of F12. And then I've copied something else to my clipboard since then.
Wow.
Why don't you talk about the other stuff though?
Well, all right. So
Wait, I do have it. Okay, I'm gonna put it in Discord.
okay. Stream won't be able to see it, but who cares? I'll be able to see.
Why not just pull it up on Discord?
No, I'm not sharing Discord. I'm sharing.
Well, open the original then. It'll open in the browser.
Open the original. There we go.
So that thing in the middle,
Uh-huh.
that's my ship, and I'm zoomed in on the ship. That in the background is probably about 1,000 kilometers away.
What?
No, probably not that many. Probably more like 300 kilometers away.
Holy shit.
But it's just huge. That's Cheetah. That's the Caldari Navy assembly plant that I station at.
So this is a Citadel?
That's a Citadel-like structure, yes. In terms of size, it's not a Citadel exactly.
And you're like 300 kilometers away from this thing.
Yeah, pretty far.
That's ridiculous, dude. That's huge.
There is. I'm trying to find.
So I'm assuming your ship is this like little round thing in the middle.
Yeah,
here.
yeah. That's the ship I just bought today.
Can you walk around in that
No,
Citadel thing? Oh.
no.
I would spend like months just.
I think they did
exploring
that
it.
at one point where you could walk around in like your hangar or whatever. But yeah.
Well, all right. So that blew my mind. That's actually freaking huge. That's massive. Okay, so that's Ibu Online. Let's switch gears and talk about pretty graphics. So the NVIDIA basically today, yesterday actually, released their embargo was up for their RTX 2060 Super and 2070 Super. There's going to be a 2080 Super as well, but that's just not releasing imminently. But just know that there will be a 2080 Super. Just that wasn't on. That wasn't part of the review embargo thingy, whatever. Also, something important to note: basically, the super cards, just honestly, just think about them as TIs. So there's a 2060 Super and a 2070 Super right now. Price wise, this is actually quite important, and I'm going to keep circling back to this. So effectively, what's going to happen here in terms of the tiers and the prices? The original 2080 and 2070, these are the cards that launched last year. The original 2080 and 2070, they will be now replaced by these super cards, meaning NVIDIA and manufacturers will no longer manufacture the original 2070 and the original 2080. All you can get is these super cards. The 2060, the original 2060 will remain, and that is going to be at its original price of $350. But the 2070, the 2060 Super is going to be $400. So it's going to be $50 more than the original 2060. Additionally, the 2070 Super, which is replacing the 2070, that is going to keep the original 2070 pricing of $500. And the RTX 2080 Super, which is replacing the RTX 2080, is keeping that original pricing of $700. So really what you're getting here in terms of performance is NVIDIA is effectively bringing down their higher performance bracket down one pricing tier. Now, if that sounds a little confusing, what you're effectively getting is you're getting the 2080 level performance for the price of a 2070, because the 2070 Super in these reviews benchmarks mighty close to the original 2080. The 2060 Super benchmarks mighty close to the original 2070. However, because these super cards are retaining the original card's pricing, you are getting better performance for the same original price, which means better value overall. So, what has actually changed here? A lot, actually. There have been huge updates and upgrades to these cards. Like I said, we only have the 2060 Super and the 2070 Super. The 2080 Super is coming at a later point. But let's look at the 2060 here for the time being. So the original core count from the 2060 was 1920. The 2060 Super gets bumped to 2176. You get better ray tracing performance. So you get 6 gigarrays in the Super versus 5 gigarrays in the original. You get a bump in RAM from 6 gigabytes to 8 gigabytes of GDDR6. You get a bump in the memory bus from 192-bit to a full 256-bit. And this has the knock-on effect of having a increase in the memory bandwidth from 336 gigabytes to 448 gigabytes per second. The processor chip remains the same. So this is still the TU106 chip, and it's going to have a slightly higher TDP, but honestly, that really shouldn't affect your power supply so much. So basically, the 2060 Super is quite close now to the original 2070. The 2070 had 2,304 cores. The 2060 Super has 2,176. Both the original 2070 and the 2060 Super have the exact same amount of RAM, the exact same memory bus, the exact same memory bandwidth, and they're all built on that TU106. So this is what I mean. The 2060 Super is performing very close now to the original 2070, but it's $100 less, which is great. Honestly, for consumers, that's great. Now, let's talk about the 2070 Super. The 2070 Super sees a core jump from 2,304 in the original to 2,560. We see an increase in the ray tracing performance from 6 gigarrays to 7 gigarrays. Still the exact same memory bus, and bandwidth as the 2060 Super and the original 2070, which is to say 8 gigs memory, 256-bit bus, and 448 gigabytes per second bandwidth. It is getting the actual processor itself is getting a bump in the boost clock from 1620 megahertz to 1770 megahertz. And this is actually the crucial part. So the original 2070 was actually built off of the TU106 chip. However, the 2070 Super is now actually being built off of the TU104. Now, the TU104 is the same chip that is
2080, right?
As the 2080, correct. So what I think they're actually doing is, because they've had some time now to optimize the supply chain and the processing and the manufacturing, they're actually getting better yield from the TU104 chip. And I suspect what's happening is the chips that aren't necessarily good enough for 2080, they're now using as 2070 Supers, which makes sense when you look at the core count and everything compared to the 2080. But because this is based off of the 2080 chip, the power required to run the 2070 Super is just more than the original 2070. So now you're talking about a 215 watt TDP versus 175 watt TDP in the original 2070. So really, this 2070 Super tracks very close to the original 2080 in virtually every single respect except for the core count. The core count is, in the 2080, you have 2,944 cores in the 2080, but in the 2070 Super, you have 2,560. And the ray tracing performance of the 2070 Super, like I said, is 7 gig arrays, and in the 2080 original is 8 gig arrays. So yes, the 2070 Super is between the 2070 and the 2080, but it's much, much closer to the 2080, to the point where, like, if you slightly overclock the 2070 Super, you're basically going to get the 2080. But crucially, it is $200 less than the 2080 was. So you're, again, like I said, you're getting the higher tier of performance, but for the same price that you were paying before. So more performance for the same lower price equals better value. So those specs out of the way, let's I've read like basically a million reviews of these things, and there's a lot to take away here. So first of all, the 2080 Super, we don't know anything about it yet, but actually, I guess we do, because I'm looking at a chart here from PC Gamer, and I don't know if this is actual speculation or if this is a real 2080 Super specs.
They wouldn't have put it in there if it was. Well, okay.
See, because I
can't. It may be speculation.
Okay.
Well, no. You're talking about the chart at the top of their article, right?
Yeah, the NVIDIA Turing GPU specifications.
It has 2080. Yeah, I guess it does. Those, they would have posted an asterisk next to it if it was speculation. So those might be specs.
Okay. So I guess this is definitely worth talking about here, because the 2080 Super compared to the 2080 Ti, which is the card I have, the Super is getting a bump now. So we're basically getting more CUDA cores. So the original 2080 had 2,944. The 2080 Super is now going to get 3,072.
Quick Windows update.
Yeah.
Those specs are on NVIDIA's website. So those are official specs.
Okay, so these are official specs for the 2080 Super. So, like I said, the 2080 has 2,944 cores. The 2080 Super is going to have 3,072. But the 2080 Ti still has 1,300 cores more than that. So the 2080 Ti is 4,352. So basically what they're doing is they are bumping up the 2080 Super, but still, like I suspected, preserving the premium of the 2080 Ti. Because honestly, when you look at this, yes, the 2080 Super is just better on paper than the original 2080, but there's still a decent gap between the 2080 Super and the 2080 Ti. One important thing that the 2080 Super is actually getting is the memory clock is getting bumped from 14 gigabytes per second, or gigabits per second rather, to 15 gigabits per second. So basically, they're getting an overclock, a factory overclock on the RAM. It still has the same 8 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory. It has the same 256-bit bus as the other Super cards. And yeah, that's the main differences here. It has where are the ray tracing cores? Yeah, so it still has two more cores, ray tracing cores, than the RTX 2080 original. So I suspect we're going to get better ray tracing performance, but it's still 20 fewer cores. The 2080 Super has 48 RT cores. The 2080 Ti has 68 RT cores. So clearly, I mean, NVIDIA is really still protecting that premium of the 2080 Ti, as I suspected they would. But what you're getting now is just a better performance card for that same $699 for the 2080 Super. And the 2080 Super is set to launch on July 19th. The 2070 Super and the 2060 Super, they're also set to launch on July 19th. It's just that the embargo for these broke earlier, I guess.
Yeah, the embargo for the 2060 and 2070 nobody has the 2080 to test yet.
Right. So I'm actually going to be very interested to see how the 2080 Super tacks in line with the 2080 Ti. I still suspect the 2080 Ti is just going to destroy it, just because it's within the same architecture, and when you're within the same architecture, you can actually trust the numbers in terms of just the raw spec numbers here.
Yeah.
But still, don't let that come off as I'm trying to diminish the 2080 Super. this is just better performance for that same price. So
Mhm.
that's a good thing. uh, interestingly, when you look at all of these performance numbers here, and this is kind of what I was reading for the last couple of days. PC Gamer, I like the way that they kind of present their numbers, because they show you not just every single game and app that they tested, but they show you an 11 game average, so you kind of get a big kind of overall idea and feel for how these cards perform. And at 1080p medium, basically, wait, is this the chart that? Okay, here we go. At 1080p ultra, this is the chart that I wanted to look at. If you actually look at this chart, it's a little bit small on stream. It doesn't help if I expand it, but in 1080p resolution at ultra settings, the 2070 Super basically trades blows with the Radeon 7. Like, it's within one frame, and the 2870 Super is actually higher than one frame, which in my opinion, that's margin of error. So what you can really say is that the
They're
2070
on
Super,
par.
it's on par with the Radeon 7. Now, I'm going to pause here really quickly. Bradford reviewed the Radeon 7.
It's a good card.
Yep, we both reviewed the original 2070. Bradford and if I had to take 2070, I'd probably buy Bradford's version instead of my version, because mine was like literally $150 more. But the 2070 was a $500 card. Okay, this 2070 Super is also going to it's going to be that same $500. But now what it's doing is it's performing on par with the Radeon 7, which is a $700 card. And on top of that, Bradford mentioned this in his review, RTX has the value add of ray tracing and DLSS. Now, it doesn't matter if you personally use those features or not. My bet is that if you bought an RTX card, you intended to use those features. But the fact remains that these are features in this RTX 2070 Super, which do not exist in the Radeon card, because the Radeon card does not have hardware accelerated ray tracing. It does not have hardware accelerated machine learning with the DLSS. And we have games now that use both of these things. Metro Exodus, in my opinion, is a prime pristine example of ray tracing and DLSS.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Battlefield 5.
There's Control coming up too, which we don't know how it's actually going to perform, but by all accounts, it's going to look amazing.
It's going to look amazing, and from all the trailers and interviews I've read about the game, I mean, Remedy's Northlight engine is like a godsend in terms of tech. Yes, so I have full faith in them. They're Finnish, right? I think they're Finnish.
Yeah.
So I have faith in the Finns. But here's the important thing, guys. The 2070 Super, in rasterization performance alone, trades blows with the Radeon 7. Rasterization is traditional gaming rendering without ray tracing, right? It trades blows with the Radeon 7, which is $200 more. When you consider the fact that this 2070 Super also got a bump in performance to the ray tracing aspect, you are now going to receive better ray tracing performance in the 2070 Super than the original 2070, meaning the value add it's compounded on top of that $200 deficit, really, that the Radeon 7 has. Now, going further down here, we're actually seeing, and this to me is actually quite impressive, the 2070 Super across 11 games, according to PC Gamer, averages 115 FPS at 1080p Ultra. Compare this to 121 FPS on the original 2080 that they've got. So it's about 5 frames per second difference. Now, even more impressively, that 2070 Super actually outperforms the GTX 1080 Ti, which was the previous generation's flagship. I had that card. It's a phenomenal card. But think about that. You guys are getting basically last-gen flagship performance for $200 less. Which, in my opinion, is the way that it should be. It should have been this way from the start. And I'll get into that in a little bit here. The 2060 Super, according to PC Gamer, this card actually outperforms the GTX 1080 by a few frames, and it's within spitting distance of the original 2070. So again, you're getting very close to 2070 level performance, but for $100 less money. Again, that just adds to the value. And remember that the 2060 Super not just got it didn't just get a clock bump, it got a ray tracing performance bump as well. So let's talk about the ray tracing performance. Digital Foundry actually has some benchmarks specifically for the ray tracing performance. So they ran some benchmarks here. One was 3D Mark Port Royale, which is actually, this is just a pure ray tracing benchmark. And it's pretty dank and also like very, very, very stressful. But they ran this benchmark at 1080p. And according to their numbers, the super cards outperformed their non-super original versions pretty handily. The 2060 Super basically got 10 more FPS than the 2060, and the 2070 Super got roughly 5 more frames per second than the 2070 when it came to ray tracing. And these are impressive numbers. So when we actually talk about real games, like for example Battlefield 5, we're seeing that same story play out. The super cards' ray tracing performance is better than their non-super versions. And they're just better.
Oh, excuse me.
So those are the ray tracing, right? I'd like to now talk about what Gamers Nexus had, because Gamers Nexus, I love reading Gamers Nexus reviews because they...
I honestly can't.
I like Steve because his mind works like mine. Like he goes into the minutia of the
That's
numbers and everything.
why I can't. They are so boring to me.
I love it. Like I live for these these type of numbers. I love reading these reviews because his mind works like mine. I have a lot of respect for Steve Burke.
No, me too. It's incredibly boring. I'll watch the video.
Oh, I do both. Because I like to hear because he has additional commentary apart from the article anyway. But in the article and in the video, so they revamped their testing methodology, which was very interesting to read about because that's a conversation for another day. But really, what they're talking about here when it came to the actual performance. So if I scroll, I had my place previously, and now I have to scroll all the way down. Okay, so basically, in the review, he brings up the same sort of concern that I had when I think his video title was actually like "Killing Radeon 7" or something like that. But he brings up that same concern where now you have a 2070 Super, which performs the same as a card that is $200 more, and that $200 more expensive card doesn't have ray tracing, hardware accelerated ray tracing, or hardware accelerated machine learning. So it's just a worse value overall. Now, when Bradford did his review of the Radeon 7, I think I'm not mistaken when I say that you stated in your review, like, yeah, sure, the 2080 and the Radeon 7, they're the exact same price, but like the 2080 has that inherent value add.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I basically stated the Radeon 7 is great if you want to stay within AMD's ecosystem and don't care about ray tracing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why?
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is the why? Because I think in that, when you're comparing the 2080 and the Radeon 7, because they're priced the exact same, personally, I still think the 2080 is just a better value because it objectively is. But a person could make the argument to go for the Radeon 7. They could, right? Like you said, if you're within the AMD ecosystem, you could very well make the argument to go with that Radeon 7. However, now with this 2070 Super, which effectively performs the same, can you really make that argument anymore? I don't think you can. My opinion, I don't think you can.
If it was just at 1080p, you could make the argument that 1080p is throttling, because the Radeon 7 was really made for 4K and 1440p. But the fact that the 4K numbers are so similar as well is just why.
Yeah, no, the 4K numbers, we're literally talking about 0.6 of a frame difference between the Radeon 7 and the 2070 Super, which again is margin of error. They're, for all intents and purposes, they are identical cards. One is $200 cheaper though, with more features. So how can you realistically make that argument? So here is where it gets very, very muddy and where I start to get a little bit frustrated here. So we know that AMD has Navi in the works. In fact, that's releasing on July 7th. That's releasing in like what? Sunday? No. Yes, Sunday. I don't know. July 7th.
Yeah, Sunday.
But what they're releasing, there's two cards that they're releasing. They're releasing the 5700 XT, and then they're also releasing a slightly cut down version called the 5700. Now, I'm not putting words in AMD's mouth. This is what AMD themselves said on stage with their slides. They directly compared the 5700 XT against the RTX 2070. Now, remember, when these presentation was made, the super cards didn't exist in terms of we had no idea what their specs were, and we'd had no benchmarks and reviews for them. But now we do. When AMD was comparing their quote unquote flagship Navi card, which is the 5700 XT, against the 2070, yet we have reviews that the super version, which is completely replacing the 2070, like you literally will not be able to buy the 2070 anymore. The only thing you'll be able to buy is the 2070 Super. Now, all of a sudden, you have that super card, which is going to toe with AMD's next tier above. Like, they're not even going to be competing with the 5700 XT here. They're competing with the Radeon 7, and it's cheaper. And when you consider the fact that the 5700 XT, which is, I believe it's the same price. I believe it is what's what, $450 for the 5700 XT?
Yep.
So it's $50 cheaper than the 2070 Super. But for that $50 more, you get Radeon 7 level performance. You also get ray tracing. You also get DLSS. Now, again, how can a reviewer look at the 5700 XT? Again, we need actual benchmarks for this, but I'm confident in saying I don't need benchmarks to come to this conclusion right now. I'm sure the benchmarks will back up what I'm about to say, but as a reviewer, how can you sit there with the 5700 XT when the 2070 Super is out for $50 more and tell consumers don't buy this 2070 Super, get the worst performing card and save $50, where I honestly fundamentally believe when you're in that price bracket, I feel like reasonable human beings would look at those two cards and say, you know what, the $50 is worth it because I'm getting Radeon 7 level performance for only $50 more. The only thing I can come up with is, unless they're so entrenched in AMD's ecosystem that they're not going to consider RTX, but I'd like to believe that there are reasonable consumers out there when looking at this stuff. They want their best performance per dollar. When you're talking about hardware, you want performance per dollar. So, I mean, I don't know. This, to me, this is just really incredible because on one hand, it can very, very easily be argued that, like, yeah, NVIDIA, coincidentally putting out these super cards, taking the wind out of AMD sales.
Yeah.
They did this because they're feeling the pressure of competition. Well, somebody could reasonably make that argument, though I don't think it's necessarily pressure, and it's just the fact that they can do it, and they know that they built in headroom in the original RTX cards, that they know that they can do it, so they're just going to do it.
Yeah, I don't think this is pressure from AMD because at the end of the day, NVIDIA is still the undisputed GPU king right now. Nothing is touching the 2080 Ti. And while the 2080 Ti may be out of the price range for the vast majority of gamers out there,
oh yeah, absolutely,
it exists.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Right?
So I mean, you have to. AMD needs an answer to it, and for so long we all thought it was going to be Navi, and it's very obviously not going to be Navi. It could be whatever they have coming up, or maybe they're saving something for down the road. Maybe they just don't care. I've long held that AMD is a CPU company first and foremost who dabbles in GPUs. And this just continues to prove it. And it just shows that NVIDIA is as cocky as it deserves to be. I don't think they did this because they thought the Radeon cards were threatening. I think they did this because they know they can.
Yeah, No, I agree. Like I don't think that there's an actual pressure here because the Nvidia commands the market, like Bradford said. And I mean, here's the thing. Like, yes, we know that there's supposed to be a rumored Navi 20, but like, I guarantee you, no matter what Nvidia comes out, or AMD comes out with that Navi 20, Nvidia is going to have an answer which is just going to be better for roughly the same price.
Yep.
And I say for roughly the same price because for years that was the argument that you could buy an AMD card, right? Well, it's cheaper, right? Like price wise, it was cheaper. That is no longer the case, and it hasn't been the case. So I mean, I genuinely don't know because the competition, the way that I'm looking at the market right now, the competition from AMD, they're doing the bare minimum. They're literally doing the bare minimum because look at, again, in their own words, look at how they marketed the 5700 XT and the 5700. They were comparing it to the 2070 and the 2060, the mid-ranged cards in NVIDIA's stack. What did they compare the Radeon 7 to? The 2080, the high end. Do they have an enthusiast card? Bradford just said they didn't. So what are they doing? They're doing the bare minimum to just basically keep pace with Nvidia, and they can't. But the fact is, they can't keep pace with Nvidia.
To be fair, I think that they see Nvidia as obviously a competitor, but they're not worried about it because at the end of the day, they have more contracts for their stuff. Their card is used prolifically in Hollywood and Bollywood. Their
They're in the consoles.
Yeah, their technology is in every console. That's except for the Switch.
Yeah,
They don't need the high end to make money. Is what I'm getting at. So it's one of those things where this is all Nvidia does is GPU tech that leads into other industries, sure, but they're a GPU company. AMD is a CPU company that dabbles in GPUs, but what they do is so spread across many different, tech industries that having that high end isn't as important as it is for Nvidia. It's important for the industry for us because we want that level of competition. We want there to be multiple companies out there with a top level card so that there is some sort of pricing parity. $1,400 card is allowed to be $1,400 because it's the only one there. You know, but at the end of the day, this goes back to everything I've said about AMD for years now. They don't need to do it, so why do it?
yeah, and from a business standpoint, I think that's correct, right? Because they have contracts with Microsoft and Sony, which I assume are worth more than a couple dollars,
Yeah,
and they're used across enterprise, like their enterprise. I mean, so yes, when you look at it from that business perspective, sure, why bother when
yeah.
they can do all this?
Not just enterprise.
But
They're the AMD. The Radeon 7 still beats the 2080 in content creation software
yeah,
as well. It's a
yeah, it
better
does.
card for content creation. It's a better card for video makers. Better card for enterprise. It
Yep.
doesn't run in Teslas, but someone designing what the Tesla looks like is probably using it.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. From the business standpoint, it doesn't really matter. But you guys know me, I don't really care about the business standpoint. I want competition for us consumers. And the cold hard fact is that okay, yes, you could argue that there is competition because there are two companies that they're making similar products in similar markets. But is there actual competition? Is there real genuine competition? I would make the argument that there isn't because AMD hasn't even released the 5700 XT and the 5700, but we already have cards
And they're already
that are
beaten.
that are already beating them for the same price or cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, in the 2070 Supers case, it is literally a card that is cheaper than AMD's flagship card, and this Super is not NVIDIA's flagship. It is the third tier card in NVIDIA's stack. A third tier NVIDIA card is now trading blows with AMD's flagship. Think about that. Think about that. This is why I say I don't think that there is competition. And to me, when I look at stuff like this, I get so frustrated because as a consumer, I want competition. Because when people compete, we just get better products. What the super cards are, objectively, they are better products. But are they better products because of a result of competition? No. They're not. They are not a result of competition. They're doing it because they can. And that's not competition. That is
It's
holding the
plopping.
high ground and just doing whatever you want because you can do
That
it.
is plopping.
It is plopping. Competition would have been if AMD came out with Navi and said, "Oh yeah, by the way, this has hardware accelerated ray tracing." Then I guarantee you Nvidia would have really been sweating when they're like, "Oh crap, like they all of a sudden they have ray tracing now." It's like, "Oh crap, the Russians can get to the moon now." Like there's a reason why the space race was the space race is because we had competition. This is not that. This is supercards do not exist because of competition. And I so desperately want competition because when you have a company out there, just in my opinion, and from all observable standpoints that I can glean from just reading and basically studying the industry, AMD is just doing the bare minimum here. And again, from a business standpoint, they can afford to do that, but I don't care about that. I'm a consumer. They're doing the bare minimum. That's not good enough. They need to do more. And the fact that they seem to be okay with not doing more, that is frustrating to me. And like I've mentioned in previous shows, I don't know if it's because they genuinely can't do more because they just don't have the innovation engineering talent that
No,
Nvidia
they
does.
are working on things like ray tracing. Like when they, I think, what it was this week, they kind of laid out their vision for. No, it was 3 weeks
No, it
ago
was
actually.
it was during E3.
Yeah, they showed off their tracing vision, so we know they're working on it. We know that, but again, AMD's a CPU company that happens to make GPUs. You see all of their innovation going to the Ryzens, and with good reason. They are legitimately making Intel shake in their boots, which hasn't happened for probably a decade or two.
Yeah.
But that same level of drive isn't being applied towards the Radeon Technologies Group, which is a
Yeah.
separate group. It's under the AMD umbrella, but it's a separate team.
It is a separate team, but like I just to me when I see that it frustrates me because like imagine how much they could command with CPUs and GPUs. Like seriously think about that. They could legitimately dominate the market
They
because
probably have the resources to do it.
they have both components. They could legitimately do it, but for whatever reason they're not doing it and I want them to do it. Wait, like we have been in a situation in the GPU market where we have gotten AMD products for the last 4 years, but they just legitimately cannot really compete
I really
uh,
wonder.
like at a performant level really with Nvidia have staying power. Like Nvidia has managed to out engineer them at every single turn, and I don't want the next 4 years to be like that.
I really wonder what the market penetration is when you consider all of the different devices that use AMD or Nvidia type GPUs. Because I think
I
that
bet
would.
it's dependent on the slice of the market you look at.
Well, no, I'm talking the entire anything that would use a GPU essentially. What are they seeing that's showing them that they don't need to attack that high end? You know,
Yeah, and I would like to see that too because they probably have more
they probably have more market share than Nvidia.
devices that use AMD than Nvidia does.
Yeah, they probably have more market penetration than Nvidia does by a long shot when you consider there are what upwards of 80 million PS4s alone in the marketplace. You add about that many Xbox Ones, you add Xbox One X's. You think back to the fact that Macs are now using AMD's Navi and Vega GPUs.
Mm-hmm.
You have all the content creation GPUs out there. You have all the enterprise GPUs out there. I really wonder if they're looking at this, seeing that they have more market penetration than Nvidia can possibly have, and just don't feel the upper guys at AMD, who the Radeon group has always been an offshoot because AMD was originally just CPUs and they bought ATI, and then just absorbed them into the technology group. So it's always been like the redheaded stepchild for AMD, anyways. So I wonder if they're looking at that, seeing that they have all of this market penetration and they don't feel the kind of pressure that they would if they were struggling in terms of people buying their stuff or their stuff being used. Like what
Yeah,
we saw with the CPUs. FX 8 core CPUs were garbage compared to what Intel had out, and nobody was using them. And what do we see? We see Ryzen. After that, we see Threadripper. We see them actively going after what Intel has built themselves up when AMD was weak. I really wonder why, whatever data they're showing them, why they're seeing that and not feeling the same pressure from the GPU side. So.
Yeah, and that effectively that trickles down into because the consumers feel that, right? They feel that, and they literally pay that. And it's frustrating. It really is frustrating. I really want to see an actual competitor in the GPU landscape, but we're not. We're getting one company that is doing genuine innovation and charging the amounts that they are because they can. And the reason they can do that is because the other company is just doing the bare minimum to just put a product out there, in my opinion. And that's frustrating.
And I don't know if you think this, I think if you decide to buy an AMD card, I don't think you're going to be upset with what you're getting, because it's still a good card for what you're buying. The Radeon 7, if you bought that card instead of a 2080, I think the only thing you'll be disappointed with is the fact that if you used multiple monitors, a driver broke it back in May. But also, that was more so me. That's why I don't have it in my system anymore right now. But if you didn't care about ray tracing or thought it was too much of an infant technology to make it worth buying a 2080, and you wanted to stay in AMD's ecosystem, I don't think you're upset with that purchase. I just think if you're going to spend that much money, now there is a no-brainer choice. Before, I could still understand going with the Radeon 7 over a 2080, even with the value add the 2080 had. Because at the time, there was only like 3 games that used ray tracing, and they used it very sparingly, and there was such a performance hit that, in my opinion at the time, it didn't feel worth it. But since then, we've had Metro Exodus come out. We've seen the super cards now beating out the $700 card from AMD. You have the Navi cards coming out and being a disappointment out of the gate. If you're someone like me who wants that, you can still put out those cards, but have something that competes at the higher level and has ray tracing, because that is going to be the future. Whether it's coming into its own now, or whatever, it's going to be a mainstay in the gaming industry moving forward.
And we had, people, I think, forget this, or maybe they just don't know this, but in the first year that ray tracing has been out, there have been more ray tracing games in the first year of this technology coming out than there were DX12 games in the first year that DX12 was out in the wild. Ray tracing has seen better adoption in its first year than DirectX 12 did.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody can look at that and tell me that ray tracing is a fad or it's not. We are on the cusp of a genuine rendering game. This is a revolution. This is a genuine step change in how games are created and played. We are right now on the cusp of that transition. Look at the games coming out. Bradford mentioned Control. That game is coming out in August, guys. That is a month and a half away, and that game is going to release. And from everything that I have seen and read, and Bradford, you've seen and read, both of us are pretty damn impressed by what we've seen here.
It's the first game that has literally made ray tracing make it look transformative. Because even with Metro Exodus, I wasn't a fan of how dark the game got in points when using ray tracing. I understood why it did that, and cool, it makes sense. But seeing RTX off versus RTX on in the Control demos that I've seen has literally been mind-blowing and just completely game-changing.
It is. So and stuff like that is, when you have talented developers that use this technology, you cannot look at that and say that, oh, this is ray tracing is just a thing, it's going to die. It won't. We are seeing serious adoption of it. We're getting Control in August. What are we getting in October? We're getting Call of Duty. Oh yeah, that's using ray tracing. This is Call of Duty, literally the most mainstream game you can get. Actually, no. This is a different engine.
I know.
Well,
it's a different engine
super
now.
Modified. Yeah, it's probably a super modified in it.
But just think about that freaking Source engine.
It's not Source, dude. It was id Tech.
It's Source.
No, it's not.
It's modified Source. That's Titanfall. I know.
Call of Duty is getting ray tracing, and then what's happening next year Cyberpunk 2077, arguably the biggest game that's going to be releasing next year, that's going to get ray tracing. I mean, we are getting all of these games are getting this technology, and we're seeing one company giving developers tools to do it, and the other company just doing the bare minimum. And I, as a consumer, that is so frustrating, and it's unacceptable. Like we should not be in that situation in this industry where we have really only one player in the market driving things. I think that's wrong. I want to see new stuff and I want to see competition, and we don't have that. So there's my rant. Maybe Navi 20 will change things. I doubt it will, because by that time, NVIDIA will have had learnings from these supercards. I mean, that is why the supercards are as good as they are, is because they were able to optimize the manufacturing process and get Turing kind of get a better handle on it. So the fact that NVIDIA was able to do this refresh in such short amount of time before AMD's Navi generation is even out,
One of the
that's
things, it kind of makes me wonder if they had this refresh just in their back pocket, waiting for this moment, which
Oh.
wouldn't doubt me at all.
I'm sure
I
when
wouldn't
they
be surprised.
built,
I mean,
yeah, I'm sure when they built the original 2060s, 2070s, and 2080s, they spec'd them the way they did so that they could have the headroom to make refreshes down the line. I'm sure they did that because that's just what Jensen does. So what surprised me was the prices. They were basically the same prices. I could have totally seen Nvidia charging like $100 more, but they didn't, because that's what Nvidia would have done. They would have done that, right? But they didn't do that. So anyway, I just, if you're in the market for a new graphics card, I honestly, like, I can't recommend the Radeon 7 anymore. I just can't. Like, I don't think any reasonable reviewer would do that. Like, you can't do that anymore. You have to say, no, get the 2070 Super. It's $200 cheaper, guys. That's not a small chunk of change. You could spend that money on a really good motherboard.
yep.
I mean, that's yeah. So that's the super cards. The TLDR is that they are a genuine upgrade over their original versions. You're just getting a much better value here, and my frustration with AMD continues. And I honestly don't think it's going to go anywhere in the next year or so, next 4 years even. But let's close out the stream.
Yeah. So what we're working on how to reach these keys. What are you working on? Your PMAX review went live. I saw, or Pimax, I think it's actually
Wait, it
pronounced. Yeah, I read it earlier today.
I didn't even know that.
Hey, so you can go read Shank's Pimax review on MMORPG.com. That went live earlier today.
I had no clue.
Yep, Pimax 5K plus
Oh,
VR
there it is.
review.
Look at that.
It's actually a really good review if you're looking into something other than the Steam VR headsets or an Oculus Rift. If you want something with a wide FOV, I'm jealous of that freaking FOV, man.
Dude, the FOV for this thing, it was a game changer. I mean, it is a legitimate game changer. Having a 200-degree field of view, plus the higher resolution. I mean, this is a genuinely good resolution. It's a 2560 by 1400 per eye.
Yeah, the Oculus Rift S by comparison, I think, is 1200 per eye, which is an upgrade from the original.
Yes.
But it's not as good as that.
Yeah, and see, this is when you're running this type of resolution. That's why they call it a 5K, because total it's 5K. But this is honestly where you need something like a really powerful graphics card, because I'm telling you right now, Elite Dangerous for me, when I try to render it at this 5K resolution, it cannot do 5K at 90 hertz. It can't. I mean, it just straight up can't. So
Yeah.
it does it at 45 hertz, and then it uses the interpolation to render it at 90 hertz. And when I'm playing the game, it's buttery smooth. But it's funny because when I take my headset off and look at my monitor, because you know how it like mimics that, that actually has the frame rate counter on it, and it says 45 FPS on there, because it's a 2080 Ti trying to push out 5K in a game like Elite Dangerous is that's pushing it. But I didn't know this was live. That's cool. I thought it was. Chris told me it wasn't going to be live until the 5th, but this is.
Well,
cool.
they probably did it now because of the holiday. and with Chris being out, it was Susie doing it all.
True. That's true. So yeah, definitely go read this review. I didn't know you. I honestly had no idea you even read it. But
yeah, what else are you working on?
This review is out. As far as what else I'm working on, I don't know yet. I'm gonna probably have some editorial going live on Monday, but we do have a stream. We're just gonna keep plugging that on Saturday at 11 p.m. Eastern. Like Bradford said earlier, we're probably gonna do some PvP, and I'm gonna panic my balls off like really hard. But that's it. What are you working on?
Nothing.
Okay.
I don't have any reviews. I don't have any hardware reviews. Nothing. I'm gonna actually enjoy my 4th of July weekend.
Excellent.
I was gonna write something about this entire Drifter thing going on in EVE Online.
I think
I
you
might
should,
still,
because I would like to read your take.
but I just gave my take on the show, so you know, it
Okay.
is what it is. Maybe I'll write something. Maybe I'll wait a little bit longer and see what else happens over the weekend, because it's going to hit ahead soon, and I may write about it then. Don't forget to catch our stream this Saturday. It'll be on Shank's YouTube. I mentioned it at the top of the show. I won't go back into it again. But you can follow us on Twitter for those updates when we go live. You can follow myself at LOTR Lore. You can follow Brian at Silent Fairy 007. You can follow Shank at Shank the Tank. You can follow the show at GTI Podcast.
Yep. And then visit gamingtheindustry.com for an RSS feed of the show. We're on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Zune, and whatever else. Join us every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern for new episodes on my Twitch, YouTube, Periscope, and Mixer, and also on Bradford's Facebook. Is that right?
Yeah.
All right. And you can watch the video on demand versions on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/shankthank. Just look at the Gaming the Industry playlist. I've got a playlist of all of the videos, and you should be able to watch it there.
Interesting. He'll protect you from my level 50 Necro. Actually, it's champion point level 45 Necro, but that's besides the point.
I don't play World of Warcraft.
You did, actually, though.
But that's it, guys. Thank you very much for joining, and let's say our goodbyes.
Peace out. Peace out. Peace out.
Peace out, people. Hope to see you on the stream on Saturday.